A laboratory used to pre-screen passengers for a Qantas repatriation flight from India had its accreditation suspended by the nation's laboratory board in April, the ABC can reveal. And at least 3 of the Australians blocked from returning home on Saturday's flight from New Delhi to Darwin because they tested positive for COVID-19 have since tested negative for the virus. The 2 revelations raise serious questions about the medical screening process set up by Qantas and the federal government for the resumption of travel between India and Australia. Here's Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Dziedzic.
Well, the ABC, both the Bureau here in the Parliament House but also our South Asia correspondent James Oaten, have been digging into exactly what the process was for testing that led to all of those people being bumped from that first India repatriation flight that landed yesterday morning. This is, of course, the first flight since the government's temporary travel ban came to an end. Now, as we know, that flight was only half full. There were only about 80 people. There were 80 people on it and 70 were forced to stay in New Delhi. The reason, well, for most of them, 46 of them, they'd tested positive to COVID-19. The rest were all close contacts. But there's now serious doubt and confusion about the process that was used to actually identify who had COVID, and some pretty fierce criticism of the testing regime that was used. The ABC has been speaking to about half of those who were forced to stay back because they tested positive, and it's becoming increasingly clear that many of them have serious concerns. Now, at this stage, none of those, as of yesterday, had actually experienced any symptoms of COVID-19. On top of that, 3 of them have already gone to get their own backup tests to try and confirm what they were told by the Qantas test, and they've come back with completely different results. They've all tested negative, whereas the process for the flight tested them as positive. And on top of that, there are questions about some regulatory actions which have been taken against the company, which is responsible for this testing. Now, you put all of this together and you've got an enormously confusing situation for people on the ground, and many of them are complaining that they have absolutely no faith in the process that was used to actually determine who can get on and off that flight, and many are saying they believe that they were unfairly blocked from returning to Australia.
So, Stephen, given those revelations about discrepancies, what does that mean for those, particularly given the extremity of the situation, those wanting now to repatriate to Australia?
Well, it depends entirely if the government believes that there is a problem here that needs fixing, and if the government retains faith in the process that it's set up. Now, in some ways this is complicated because it's a process that was done with both the federal government and Qantas. Qantas was the company that contracted and then potentially subcontracted the companies to do these tests, but the structure of it was something that was agreed to by both parties. So, at the moment, many people are saying that they would like the government to do that over again. They don't believe it's fair, given some of the uncertainty and contradictory information coming from these tests. They don't believe it's fair that they're forced to wait another full 2 weeks before applying to get on the next repatriation flight down the track. They say the process needs to be done right from the beginning. But so far, it doesn't seem that the government is willing to take that step, presumably because they're still trying to get to the bottom of what's happened themselves. The Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, he was asked about this morning during a doorstop, and all he said is that the government would continue to follow all of the medical advice. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
There are more flights that are going to be coming from India. Again, we're following the medical advice, and as you do when you're boarding planes to Australia from other countries, you need to take those tests.
Labor, of course, has really slammed the government over this. The Shadow Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, has accused the government of bungling the whole process, while Anthony Albanese, the leader of the opposition, has been reiterating the point that the opposition's been making for a while now, that they believe that the government hasn't made sufficient efforts to bring Australians back from all over the world, and including from India, exposing them, Labor says, to unacceptable levels of risk. Let's take a listen to Anthony Albanese.
We need to see how the Australian government continues to not look after our citizens. These people should be brought home, as should others. There should be appropriate quarantine facilities to make sure that Australians here are kept safe. If the federal government had have listened to Premier Palaszczuk last October, the quarantine centres that she proposed, appropriate facilities, would be built now, would be opened, would be able to be used. We should be able to bring these Australians home.
Now, the question, of course, is how many people are going to come forward over the next few days to say that they've also got contradictory results. We know of at least a few other people in that batch of 46 who are also getting their own backup tests. If there's more that come forward with contradictory tests saying that they've actually not got the disease, then it seems safe to assume that pressure will really grow on the government, not only to take a fresh look at their circumstance, but also take a look at overhauling the whole process that's been put in place.
The Prime Minister says the government is in discussion with the airline to resolve any issues, but said testing is critical to protect against importing coronavirus.
Well, it's a very difficult environment to operate in, where India is right now, and we'll work closely with Qantas, they're obviously conducting that testing regime as part of their processes, and they'll get every support from us. But it is a very difficult environment to operate in at the moment. I'm pleased that we've been able to get 80 people home already. I hope and intend for us to get even more home in the other repatriation commercially facilitated flights in the weeks ahead.